All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Mike Gagnon with the Dow Group. I'm a realtor here in the Lakes region of New Hampshire. I've been doing this for about 22 years, and I am speaking with the great and powerful Max Wellette, who's also a member of the Dow Group. Max, how long have you been in real estate?
So in October, it'll be 4 years, October 7th. So it's like the day before my dad's birthday. So it'll be 4 years.
4 years. That's awesome, man. How are you enjoying it?
Well, I like it a lot. It's kind of a interesting industry change for me. Because previously, I had a lot of different careers, but mainly when I graduated high school, I was on a career path to be a mechanical engineer. And obviously, going from an engineering background to a more entrepreneurial business background was a change, but I always felt like that was kind of up there with my engineering background. So I like to think that that reflects in my work as a real estate agent, trying to break down a transaction essentially mechanically to a piece of equipment that makes sense, I guess. I don't know, but I'm never like, I'm definitely not like I can't fix a car or anything like that. But like that's kind of how my brain works. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I guess that's like how I think of a transaction. I don't know. I'm kind of spewing nonsense here, but
No, no, I get it. It's like coming at it from a completely different perspective because, my background was communications and marketing. And I know that there's all kinds of different styles and all kinds of different people out there. And sometimes I don't necessarily align great with more detail-oriented people because I'm like a big picture person, and it's great to have like a detail-oriented person to talk to because honestly, sometimes I've got blind spots. I don't even really see some of the things that you're seeing, the way you can break down a transaction. I mean, I've been doing it long enough where it's kind of like second nature in a way. But sometimes I'm still surprised, like, oh wow, yeah, that's interesting. So I love that.
yeah, and it's really interesting because, I think every business is the same from a financial standpoint, right? Is the business making money and what is it costing to run it? And I really feel like real estate has a, I want to say it's more of an unlimited income potential compared to other industries. Obviously, we're affected by the overall healthiness of the general economy,
Right.
but like being in an industry like I was before, and I had my previous business in 3D printing, product development, prototyping, that sort of thing. I definitely feel like you're a lot more constrained to your customer base because obviously the customer base for that particular industry is a lot less than the real estate market because everybody needs a place to live, right? So
Sure.
I definitely feel like, from a business standpoint, are you making money and how much is it costing you to run the business is the same, but your income potential is ultimately how hard you want to work. And you can make that argument for a lot of industries in any bit being in any business, but you're not constrained by a customer base. The only customer space you're constrained in is where you can drive to, which kind of leads us into what we were talking about as our first question, Mike.
Yeah, no, and wow, that was a great segue right into it. I'm sort of, I don't know if I use the word old school or traditional or my sort of value add or unique proposition, if you will, is I consider myself in this area, meaning Guilford, Laconia, Belmont, Meredith, like my side of the lake, to be a one-call realtor, meaning there's only, you have a problem, I know who to call directly to get an answer, right? So like I'm the one call person. It could be a zoning issue, it could be finding a good contractor. I don't know, it could be finding out who lived in the house before, getting history, that kind of stuff. So I feel like that's sort of my what I can bring to a deal. And I do know that that's changed a little bit with the internet. You know, you've got different ways of ranking vendors and contractors and that kind of stuff. But I'm really big on the local relationship. Whereas, you know, maybe the newer model is sort of where you are, Max, and it's like, hey, man, I'm licensed in Rhode Island. I'm licensed in New Hampshire. I'm going to get, were you talking about getting your license in Maine?
Well,
Or
I
are you
am
licensed?
licensed in Maine. Yes.
There you
You
go.
did send me a referral for Maine last year, so I'm happy that you
I'm,
remember that. So,
Right. Thanks. Yeah, no kidding.
um, so
So,
I guess I see where you're coming from, and for me, I don't think that that's lost in this industry. I think people still appreciate that a lot. For me, since I'm younger and newer to the business and newer to the state, I'm still holding my license in Rhode Island for personal reasons. I'm not
sure.
really looking for a ton of business down there. I'm not actively lead generating, but I'll help out people who are close to me and my family who want to use me, and I appreciate them understanding that and understanding that I live in New Hampshire and it might not be as traditional. But for me, I ultimately look at a real estate transaction, like I said, as like not as a transaction. Obviously, there's a lot of emotion and uh, things that go into each transaction that are different, but the core of putting an offer in, how to deal with that, how to get it to the closing table can be similar in many cases, or I know how to handle that no matter the case.
Sure.
Um, and I work with a lot of buyers, so a lot of buyers moving to different areas. We were talking about this earlier today, as I'm more buyer heavy right now. You're more list heavy, so to
Right.
to have those connections from a listing agent standpoint is huge,
Yeah.
and it's also very important from a buyer's agent standpoint. But for me and where I am in my business right now, ultimately, I'd like to be where you are at. I don't think that me driving 2 hours for everything is a long-term goal. I think that ultimately I'd love to settle down in an area, be involved in the community as much as possible, and have what you have. I just think you and I are in a different part of our business, and
Sure.
that's sort of my feelings on that. Um, because I'm not 2 hours is a stretch. I'd say like an hour and 45,
You're
depending on what
fine.
it's for, and
Yeah.
you know, and and to your point of, it's different with the internet, you're absolutely right. But nothing beats being able to call your guy. Case in point, last week when I had a buyer looking in your area,
Hmm.
and I said, "Hey, Mike, do you have a handyman?" He's like, "Call this guy." And I called him. I said, "Mike sent me." He's like, "When do you need me there?" Like, you can't beat that connection.
Yeah.
you know? And you can't get that by just calling some random dude on the internet. And I learned that very early in my entrepreneurial career in my previous business because I was part of the networking groups. And to be able to refer clients that know me and I will be assured that they're going to do a good job because I've referred clients to them in the past is huge. And I'm starting to build that up in this area. Um, you
When you say
know,
this area, Max, where are you?
so on the seacoast,
Okay.
but also into the lakes region through our team. Meeting people through our team and building relationships like that, and that's what makes our team great. Is nobody's really selfish to the connections they have and helping everybody. Like
Right.
it's not like you have a builder that you don't want me to have access to. Like we have. We're a very different team because ultimately we all want to help each other be successful in this industry, and it's case in point every time I have a listing or you have a listing or we're all here to help each other be successful. And so long story short, that's how I answer that question.
Right.
Ultimately, I think every real estate agent should want to be where you are at, which is really a cornerstone of the community in Laconia.
I appreciate you saying that. I feel like you're the hunter and I'm the gatherer, right? But at some point the hunter does become the gatherer because
Right,
now
you got
you've
to settle down.
well, yeah. But that's also kind of interesting because you probably have seen parts of the state that I don't even know exist. You've probably been to places, and I grew up here and it's like, huh, Really, you're telling me some, I don't know, a town that I had never even really heard of before. And um, yeah, so that's cool. I definitely can appreciate that. You know, there's different parts of the business, different levels of maturity, and I mean that only by, how much business you've done over time to
Hmm.
build. Yeah,
Yeah,
very cool.
absolutely. And um, I think we can kind of roll into that next question you had too, right? Talking about building things.
Look at that.
Yeah.
It's like you've done this before, huh?
Yeah, a few
Yeah,
times.
so that was actually really shocking to me. This National Association of Builders report that came out. I've seen it. I think it was on Realtor.com. You found it on Yahoo News. Um, that one of the hidden costs in a new build. I mean, people are all. We're going to tease this a little bit. People are always wondering why new homes are so expensive, and quite frankly, I did too. I mean, I just wasn't sure why all of a sudden that 2,000 square foot ranch is almost $1 million to build. Obviously you look at finish and land costs and all of that kind of stuff, and there's enough variables in there, but this report indicated that up to 24%, am I right,
Hmm.
24%
Yeah.
of the new build cost was associated with government permitting,
And
some
regulations.
environmental, yeah, you regulate environmental impact, zoning regulations, delays that are caused while you're waiting for inspectors to come. And, if we're that top heavy in this sort of administrative quagmire that we're asking developers to jump through, I, I don't know how we walk that back, because let's face it, regulations inherently aren't bad. I mean, they're to make sure that houses are safe, that they meet certain requirements so that they maintain their value, right? I mean, all of these things are important, but holy smokes, every time you put something new, a new regulation in, I mean, just the exponential cost from, hey, Max, I think all new homes should have a fire suppression system. I mean, it sounds great, but what are the associated costs with something like that?
Well, you know what's funny is I have that just reminded me of a conversation I had with a gubernatorial candidate in the state of Maine who unfortunately lost in the primary, but hopefully he'll run again in the future, Owen McCarthy, who I had on my podcast.
Yep.
And he came up with an example, a real example. So picture this: Northern
Okay.
Maine, okay?
Mhm.
You're an hour at least to a fire station, okay?
Yeah.
And obviously, and you have a bunch of cabins that you rent out. That's all over the place in the state of Maine.
Right.
And some of the places are grandfathered in, but this particular camp wanted to make some add-ons to their camps, fix them up a little bit. And in order for them to pull the permits for this, they needed to add a fire suppression system. Mind you, this place doesn't have power running to it. It's ran off of a diesel generator.
Oh, wow.
And the state required them, and they got an estimate. And mind you, you still had to get this company to drive out there. Mind you, this is in rural Maine. Sprinkler companies, fire suppression companies are not that prudent in rural Maine, you
Hmm.
know, has to go out there, and they were quoted like 250 grand to come out there and do this work, right? To help improve their business, help make them more money, ultimately pay more taxes. But the state shot itself in the foot by regulating a fire suppression system and hunting camps on a lake in rural Maine. First of all, think about the environmental impact that's going to have on the water supply in the area, right? And having to store that water, and then there's the cost, and then there's the state shooting itself in its own foot and really cheating itself over the long term of more tax money because ultimately that business was going to benefit by making more money and having to pay
Exactly.
more taxes, right? So I don't really get that passionate about a lot of different things, but I definitely feel like I can do this because it's within our industry, right?
Hmm.
And when I saw this study, like instantly made me angry because a lot of people love to blame a lot of different things that are associated with building costs, but it's always been regulations in the building industry, having to pull permits for tiling your shower.
Right.
Like give me a break. We're not tearing down walls. We're not changing plumbing. We're not doing anything that's going to hurt the environment. I'm putting new tiles in my bathroom. And some towns in New England will make you pull permits and have to pay $1,000 to get this permit on a small scale. You know what I mean? And when you're
Yeah.
telling me the national average is almost a quarter of the cost of building new homes, if I told you, Mike, listen, I can reduce the prices of houses by 15% tomorrow, wouldn't that be a great thing? And then you can still have all these regulations, okay, and be 10% of the cost of building a home, right? Like like you can see how passionate I get about this. You
Yeah.
started this off by saying that there's definitely a place for regulations, and you're absolutely right. But there is definitely not a place for overregulation. And I honestly think part of that isn't the government, it's the people in the towns, because regulation does what? Stop
Slows growth.
building,
Yeah.
slows growth. And we live in New England, which is the epitome of anti growth, not in my backyard. But then at the
Absolutely.
same time, they'll complain about home prices being too expensive. Okay,
Right.
you can't have one and the other at the same time. There is a way. There is an efficient way to where we can as a society, I say that lightly because I don't like that as a society term, but as a capitalist society, come together and understand that, listen, we want to help people buy houses because something like, I don't know, I saw a statistic a while ago that most new homes that are built right now are four-bedroom homes. First time buyers and small families don't need four-bedroom homes. But this
Actually,
is why
I think it's
this,
the other way. We're not building four bedroom homes
no,
anymore.
well,
It's all
well,
two
like
bedroom.
three to four bed. It's no, it's not. It's
Is it?
no,
Are you
it's
talking single family or just homes in general?
single family homes in
Okay.
general. Most new builds are not 2 to 3 bedrooms. They're over 3 bedroom homes right now
I
because
see.
in order for these builders to make money, they're being
Sure.
overregulated. Lumber costs have been inflated recently. We all know
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
But most of the cost is because of these regulations, right? And in order for
Sure.
them to make any money, they have to build $1 million house because they can't afford to build a $200,000 to $300,000 2 bedroom homes anymore
They don't
because
exist. Yeah.
because they can't afford it. Like you can't be mad at the builders. So, but this goes back to where I was going was, you know, in the state of Rhode Island, as an example, 14 towns are suing the state. The people in the towns are suing the state because the state has affordable housing uh, regulations saying that, listen, like if you're going to have this much population or this many houses, a portion of it needs to be affordable housing.
Right.
Okay. And 14 towns are suing that, right? They're stopping the people from getting started. When you're in Rhode Island or Southern Rhode Island where some of these areas are suing, it's all like beach towns, beach communities who where the average home price is 800 plus thousand and some towns it's over 1 million are suing the state for having these regulations. And that's where I feel like, sure, it shouldn't be like a crappy apartment building. Like there should be some curb appeal and there should be some incentive there to a builder to go in there and potentially um save some money, right? And maybe you deregulate that on that front. So you're building you're requiring a town or something to build something and just take some requirements down so it lowers your building costs or something like that. So but we live in this area of not in my backyard. Adam Dow and I have talked about this on our my last podcast I did with him, and it's a problem. Sorry for
You know,
that rant, but I was
I
looking
know.
forward to this when you had mentioned that. But
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I was talking with a pretty prominent developer here in Laconia yesterday. someone who actually builds some of the best product that I've seen. Just beautiful, beautiful finishes, beautiful work. And he and I were talking, and he was telling me that there was a property that he was going to develop, and he was going to put in, these beautiful duplexes. He was going to make it like feel like Nantucket, cobblestones and bocce courts and walking trails. Now, granted, these are going to be $1 million plus properties, maybe even $2 million. Um, but that being said, everybody in the surrounding area shot it down hard, like really hard. This was in Laconia, and the zoning board. I wasn't sure if it was planning or zoning, but one of them kind of they had the public hearing, and the neighbors came out with the pitchforks, and so they basically shut that project down. And he said, all right, well, you don't want the million or $2 million property. So, what we're going to do, we're going to put in some trailers. We're going to turn this into a trailer park that will have these affordable properties. And you know what? I've actually been into some of these newer units. They're actually not, they're beautiful, some of them. So, it's still going to be a nice product that they're going to put in. And of course, the neighbors shot that down as well, right? So I guess he
Yeah.
was just that dichotomy where, oh, things are too expensive, we don't want them. Things are too cheap, we don't want them. So this is going to wind up being a little 3 lot subdivision with $1 million single family homes. And I think that you kind of nailed it right on the head when you said that in New England we are huge with not in my backyard, right? And I know it to be true. I mean, I live in Laconia. At the beginning of the year, there were 700 open building permits in the city of Laconia. So, we're seeing a real surge of development. A lot of it is in the condo market. So I don't know. That's probably not scratching that itch that you were talking about, excuse me, the need for the single family home or for the starter properties.
Well, here it
Yeah.
is. Like I pulled up the statistics for that.
Okay.
So, um, another correlating statistic with this too, we'll go over later, is who's building these homes too. But
Okay.
right now, uh, uh, as of the end of 2024, so a little over a year and a half ago, 47% of the new builds in the United States of America were three bedrooms. And 32.4% were four bedrooms.
Interesting.
So 70%, 70 or 80, right? 80% of homes are three plus bedrooms, new builds right now.
Hmm.
Okay. 9.2%
And your contention is
or
that's
11.4% are two bedrooms. That's where you're going to find the affordable homes, right? Are those new builds?
actually, oh geez, I was looking at some different data sets, and they're talking about how sometimes there's a point in a home where an additional bedroom detracted from the value. Like, let's just say you have a 1,200 square foot 3 bedroom home. That house actually sells for less than a 1,200 square foot 2 bedroom home, right? Because
Interesting. I
yeah, well, you
haven't
think
seen
about,
that statistic.
yeah, but think about the square footage. If you have 3 bedrooms in the same 1,200 square feet, one of those bedrooms is tiny, right? So that
Hmm.
was something
Or
that's
they're
normal.
all smaller.
Right, they're all smaller. So I guess my point is, you know, depending on what those square footages are, et cetera, it's kind of hard to extrapolate from just that raw data what's selling better and what's more important. I mean, I'll bring up Adam again because we've had this conversation too, where his contention is like 2 bedroom homes are unnecessary. We need 3 bedroom homes because so for I guess my point in backing up is the cost associated with building a 2 bedroom and a 3 bedroom could be similar if it's the same square footage. You see where I'm going with that,
I guess
Max?
so. Yes, I do. It's just
Right?
I just think I think our thought process of what a starter home is has been inflated over the years too.
Yeah, of
And
course.
I also, because like everybody wants central AC and everybody wants all these fancy fixtures and finishes and everything like that. And, it's your first home.
Right.
All right. You're supposed to be starting off. It's just like with cars. I mean, I'm kind of guilty of this too. It's like, Everybody's got to have the next best thing in cars or phones or whatnot, and not willing to make the sacrifice and wondering why they can't afford housing. And that's kind of like the old man of me saying that,
Get off
like
my lawn.
why are you spending $6 on a coffee every
Right.
day? You know what I mean?
I love
Here's
that.
another statistic.
Okay.
50.5% of the three-bedroom homes that were built in 2024
Hmm.
were built for rent.
Ah, that sucks.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And then here's a contrast to that. 37.1% of the four bedrooms were built for sale.
Say that again. 41%.
37.1% of the four bedrooms were built for sale, and only
Wow.
10% were built for rent. And then two bedrooms, 37.8 were built for rent. So this is where you're seeing these big time companies like the BlackRocks, like all these big companies coming in, buying or building all these properties and just making people forever renters and selling oh, you just don't want the responsibility. It's tough. It's data. It's this. It's that. You don't want the headache. Just
No.
rent. And it's just like leasing a car. It's just like anything else. It just doesn't make sense because long term financial people will always tell you, or long term facts, right? People that own houses throughout their lives compared to lifelong renters statistically always have more money.
Right.
Always. 10 times out of 10. Okay, 9.99, 9.9 times out of 10.
So, so the thing about that is, I love these financial people who are like, well, if you were to take the delta between what you're spending in rent and what you're paying for insurance and maintenance and taxes on a house, and you just invest that money, you're going to make 5 times as much in the long run. And I always say, show me the person that actually does that, right? Like
Hmm.
that's home ownership is a forced savings account, right? Like you are
Hmm.
forced to do that. Whereas, the rent, and this may not be true anymore, but the delta between, the mortgage payment and the rent, um, nobody that I know of is actually investing that money. I really hope there are people that are disciplined enough to be doing that, but let's face it, that's like saying, Mike, if you were just to eat fish and meat, you would be in fantastic shape, right?
Hmm.
Or whatever. If you were to do the paleo diet, you'd be in fantastic shape. And you're probably right, but am I going to be able to actually pull that off?
Right.
Probably.
Kevin O'Leary always brings up the fact about credit cards, right? And how most people say, listen, if I get a credit card, I'm going to pay it off every month. But
Yep,
like 80% of people don't.
correct.
Over 80% of people don't. They get a credit card and they use it and they don't pay it off because they gave me 15 months interest free. And then it builds up and you're like, I don't want to pay off that $800. You
Yep.
know what I mean?
Oh, I
And
know.
then, yeah, so it's like, obviously, we're not advocating that you just place all your money into the real estate market. It's very pertinent that you diversify your investments into the stock market. And I've said that in the past. Um, but we're just talking from an overall perspective and where this conversation initially started, excuse me, which is the regulations in the housing industry and building costs and permitting costs. I truly believe that there needs to be a, dare I say, federal regulation or mandate or
Whew.
something like that that stops these states from charging ridiculous, useless environmental permitting costs and things like that. Obviously, listen, I'm a conservationist. I am not an environmentalist. I'm a conservationist. And the difference I could get into, but I don't really want to. But there is a difference, and I'll tell you what
Sure.
that difference is later, Mike, off camera.
Okay.
But I like to describe myself as a conservationist. Okay, but I'm a realist at the same time. I understand that, you know, I love the woods. I love nature. I love hunting. I love fishing. I love going outside. I love being in nature. But I also understand that people need to live somewhere. And I also understand that there's a lot of land, private land, that's not utilized as places for people to do those certain things, you know? And I know that there's a lot of land that could be developed where you have more rural towns that have zoning of minimum 2 acres,
Sure.
you know, reduce the minimum acreage. Okay. And you don't have to have all this affordable housing built up in the woods all over the place. You can specify one particular area or something because you can't just have all these high class people living in an area because who's gonna work the things that make that area a good place to live? You need to have a chain to climb up.
Yeah.
You can't just have all this upper class and the lower classes. Not that people working at restaurants are lower class, but bus people that bus tables, kids that are in high school, like, and that starts with young families, and these young families that can't afford to live in the seacoast because Portsmouth has over $1 million median pricing,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and and because all these towns are so expensive to live in, forget about property taxes on top of that, forever renting property taxes, but we're creating a gap,
We
right?
sure
And
are.
this gap is not a healthy gap. We're creating a gap that will be unfixable eventually. But, you know, at the same time, I tell myself and I tell people that will ask for my advice,
Right.
it's easy to blame the world right now and the country for not being able to afford a house. And if you have that mindset, you'll never be able to afford a house, no
Right.
matter your age. But you
It's
need
sorry, go on.
no, I'm sorry, but you just need to work harder. And I know people hate hearing that, but you need to work harder. My grandfather, you know, worked night shifts at a lumber yard, and I'm a hypocrite. I don't work hard enough. I need to work hard enough, and I'm not going to stand here and say I'm holier than thou and the hardest worker that ever existed. I'm not. But we, as a younger generation, for myself, need to stop blaming other people, put it into top gear and work our tails off to make more money so that this gap doesn't keep being created. And then we need to put ourselves in positions to make these changes so that people can afford houses. And we are doing things to create commerce and create more jobs and doing all these things because we're just heading in a direction that's not great, but there's still something we can do about it. It's not too late. So another rant, Mike.
Well, the first thing that if you were to give me the ball and say, "Hey, all right, go for it." The first thing that I would do, actually, I'm going to take it back. I'm going to tell this story, and I don't have all the details about it. But when t when television became popular, the Publishers Association of America hired a PR firm to encourage people to read, right? Because they were afraid books wouldn't sell anymore. And you know what this PR firm did, Max? Rather than extolling the virtues of reading and taking and going out there and talking about the educational benefit of reading, they went to architects who were building houses and they extolled the virtue, the design virtue of bookcases. So all of a sudden, builders were building in bookcases to all the new homes. And guess what happened? When someone bought a house full of bookcases, what did they need to do? They needed to go buy books. And one of the reasons why the publishing industry continued to thrive and made it over that hump. Now, my point in telling this story is we just kind of need to think a little bit differently. And by that I mean you talk about like a class struggle. I think the word struggle has this connotation that it's bad, right? This idea of struggle, this idea of your struggling times. I don't want to see people struggle, but perhaps that's wrong of me. Perhaps you need to struggle. Perhaps you need to find the distressed property and be ready to actually um, live there and have some struggling times. Like you said, you're not working hard enough, right? Like I think part of me as a realtor is sometimes I try and shield people from struggle. I say, oh, geez, that's going to be a lot of work. That's going to be hard for you. And Nate Dickey actually said, he turned my head on that a little bit. He's like, no, man, you got to get these people onto the treadmill, right? They need to start building wealth. And I'm just as guilty as anybody else of trying to find that perfect place for somebody, right? Like I want to feel good about that and know that people aren't struggling, but maybe perhaps they need to. And I guess we need to change the definition or the thought about the word struggle. I think struggle needs to be a good thing. Like you said, are you working hard enough? And start putting that into the culture. Like, hey man, look what you did. Good for you. Not like, hey, I automatically have the brand new car. I automatically have this stuff. What is it that who's that guy, Dave Ramsey, who says, like the paid
Mm,
off car is more important than the Rolex or whatever. Like that should become the virtue, the example of virtue. And that, we should start celebrating people that earn things, not that just are handed them or that just win it, right? And the social media, man, I'm looking at my friends, they're out on a boat or they're, on the island or they're, in that $3 million house, right? Like, yeah, that's great, but that's not fulfilling. Did they earn it? And I
mhm.
think that if you were giving me the ball, that would be the thing. Like earning it becomes the thing that we celebrate, not the thing itself, but the process of earning it. You see what I'm trying to
Mike, I
say there?
think I I'll tell you what, Mike, I think that what you just said is so right because that's something my dad always talked to me about, you know. And I remember him telling me a story when I was saying like I have no money or whatever, and he was telling me about when my mom and him were like literally living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to make rent. Dad was working two jobs. He was a door-to-door vacuum salesman and he managed a Walmart and he managed a Midas and did all these different things. And this was after he graduated college. And not he did all those things at the same time, but he did have multiple jobs at once, you know. But I think that's what makes you appreciate things more.
Right.
And I think you hit the nail on the head, Mike. I think that's a brilliant statement that you made.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. Tell all your friends.
Yeah, I will. I will.
Right. I think we're about
Um,
ready time wise. I don't know how much longer we have, but
okay, that's fine. Did you want to talk about the rhythm of the market briefly?
sure. Yeah, one of the things that we always talk about is like trying to catch a falling knife, right? Like trying to time the market. It's dangerous, right? Like it's not. I don't think you can time the market, but I do think that the market definitely has a rhythm. I mean, we see it all the time. We have these ebbs and flows and ups and downs. And just so you're aware, Max, the month of June in the Lakes region seems like it should be the season of rock and roll. It seems like it should be prime time, and it's just not. And I know I've kind of talked about this on some other platforms, but the fact of the matter is, you've got graduation, you've got Father's Day. Here in the Lakes region, we have Bike Week, and then a lot of people, they go on their summer vacation in the month of June. So we need people around. We need them in that zone, that thought process. So I think what we wind up seeing is a lot of people buy their vacation home or their summer home at the beginning of the year to enjoy that summer, or they put it on the market at the end of the year after they've had that experience. And not to sound like I'm lecturing, but in the Lakes region, we have four markets. We have a primary home market, we have a vacation home market, we have an investment market, and then we have a retiree market, right? So of course, the primary home, once school's out, we're starting to see some folks making those moves for primary. Investment can happen all year long, and it does happen all year long. Vacation, I think those are those two beginning and end points that I was talking about at the beginning of the year and towards the end of the year. We see that. And then retirement kind of follows that same idea because people need to be in the right headspace for that. So again, I don't think you can time the market, but I do think there are rhythms.
Very well said. I would agree with that completely. I think I think most markets have a similar those four sort of classifications of the markets we have, but I think definitely Laconia is subject to having it more a little bit more categorized and what's
Sure.
the word I'm looking for? Customized or something like that.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean the rhythms of the market, right? When I think of that, it's people trying to buy into the market or sell into the market, depending on market conditions. You know,
Yep.
whenever you're buying, whenever you're selling, I always think you got to think worst case scenario. Okay. So
Hmm.
right now, if you're thinking of if you don't want to buy now because you think rates are going to come down and home prices are going to come down, that doesn't happen. It's never happened before. Rates haven't came down and home prices have that doesn't happen. When rates come down, home prices go up. Okay.
Right.
And if you're thinking about selling because you think that the homes are going to be worth more, you got to be thinking, well, what if something happens? It would work out for me if I move now, and this is a lifestyle decision for me, not an investment decision for me.
Hmm.
You know, who knows? Maybe the market crashes, or God forbid, even though that's only happened 7 times in the past 100 years, what if something bad happens? And the best time to sell is always now, and the best time to buy is always now because you always got to think worst case scenario. And you have to think long term when you're buying because if you think short term, you're never going to buy a house.
Correct.
Things happen all the time. But I think there's no such thing. I mean, sometimes you get lucky and you do time the market, but you time the market when you hold real estate, when you hold it. Because, you talk to people that bought their houses in the early 2000s and they're all sitting pretty right now because
Sure.
they've owned it for 20 plus years, you
Yep.
know? And that's a mindset you got to have now, like you got to think 20 years down the future this
Yeah.
house could be worth double. Who knows what's going to happen? And it could not be. But that's why you always got to think long term. Especially if you're a first time home buyer, you got to think
Yeah.
longer than 20 years in some cases. And you always got to be willing to work harder so that maybe you don't sell that property. You rent that property and you buy another one,
Right.
and you're parking equity there,
Yeah.
'cause you've already paid that down a significant amount, you know? So yeah, I would agree with you on the rhythm of the market there. But I think we've had a really good conversation, Mike. I've really enjoyed talking with you. I got a little passionate about government regulations there, but
Right.
that's just
Yeah.
how I get sometimes. You know.
No, I've got a window here. There is a black Suburban outside. I think they're waiting for you, but that's okay.
Oh, yeah. I'll be over there. Yeah, I'll be over there shortly. Yeah. But well, are you saying they're coming for me?
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what I'm
Oh,
saying.
well then I won't be there shortly, and you don't know where to find me. I'll be gone. So, well, Mike, I really appreciate you inviting me to chat. I've had a great time.
Thank you, Max. I appreciate your passion and talking with you. That was great. You have some awesome insights. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, and this is going to be on your YouTube channel, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, right, Mike?
That's what I'd love to. I'd love that if you wouldn't mind.
If anybody somehow got notified of this being posted because we're going to be collaborating on this on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Mike's channel too. And yeah, thank you again, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you, Max. We'll see you soon.
Yeah.
All right.